Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our parent panel at Kaplan. We are thrilled to have you join us this evening for More Than Grades, the Path to College Admissions. My name is Lauren Thomas Tavel, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Kaplan Test Prep. I've been here about 10 years, and I have great empathy for what you're going through because I, too, am a parent. I have twin girls and a son that's 13 years old who's just beginning to think about college. So I'm hopeful that this next hour will be a very meaningful hour for you and we'll get a lot of your questions answered. We've gotten hundreds of questions, so what we've tried to do is consolidate them into a few major topics, and then there's specific questions that some of you have asked that we'll try to get back to you personally. Just to orient you, though, to tonight's event so that you'll know how to engage with us, we're using Hangouts on Air. There's a chat pod to the right that you can submit your questions in and join in the discussion, so feel free to do so. We certainly want to know what's on your mind. As I said, we've gotten so many questions from you that we're going to try our best to get through all of them in the hour that we have. But if we do not get to all of them, we'll send out an FAQ to anyone who's interested. And please follow us on Facebook and Twitter for more information related to any of these questions. All right, so let's get to it so that you can meet our great panel. We are very excited to have three wonderful presenters, each with a different flavor and point of view on the college admission process. So I'll have each one of them introduce themselves. We have Harlan and DJ and Lee. Let's start with Harlan.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for having me here. I'm so grateful to be part of this discussion. And Lauren, just like you, I'm a parent and I really love helping parents. That's why I wrote The Naked Roommate for Parents Only. And it's a book to help students to go to help parents to be the best partners so that they can help their kids transition to life in college. There are so many things that parents need to know. You're first responders. And I want to help you to be the best at knowing how to respond. I'm also author of The Naked Roommate and 107 other issues you might run into in college. And that's a book to help your kids so that they can do all the right things. And when they do the wrong things, they will always be supported and they'll find their people and places. Really happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. We appreciate you spending time with us this evening. Okay, so DJ.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with this amazing panel, as well as the Kaplan putting this on for us. DJ Minnify, Director of Admission at Butler University. And again, I've been here a few short months, but I come in with 10 years of college admission experience, and I've worked with liberal arts institutions. I've also worked for regional public and public institutions. So I look forward to being able to speak from the college admissions process and from that voice, but also to be able to kind of cover a variety of different types of institutions that your students might have interest in. So I look forward to the opportunity to provide the dialogue.
That's great. Thank you, DJ. I know there are a lot of questions, and not only in chat, but in the questions that we got earlier that I think you'll be just perfect to answer. And then last but not least, Lee Weiss.
Hey, Lauren. It's great to be here with all of you parents and to be on this panel alongside Harlan and DJ. So I have been working for Kaplan since I was in college myself. I started teaching SAT classes while I was in college. And 14 plus years later, here I am. I feel blessed every day that I get to run our pre-college organization here at Kaplan Test Prep and prepare hundreds of thousands of students and parents for a really important stage in their lives, taking the SAT and ACT seriously, using it as a factor to get into great colleges and have great outcomes from that. Go to schools where students are going to learn a lot, where they're going to have great outcomes and get on great career paths. So looking forward to answering your questions and talking through the standardized test piece of the college admissions process.
Great. All right. Well, let's start with some general admissions questions and get right to it. So one of the first questions that we had was, if your child is not strong academically, what are the top 3 most effective strategies for ensuring acceptance to college? I hear this quite often, and I know you do too, Lee. How would you answer that for the parents?
Sure. So, college admissions is a holistic process. Colleges are looking for great applicants who have all different types of talent. So If your child doesn't have a great GPA and they're getting to the point where it's time to apply for college, there are a number of things you can do. One of the best is to really do your best on the standardized admissions tests. Bring in as good an SAT or ACT score as you can. In addition to that, extracurriculars, great recommendations from teachers who can vouch for your capabilities. If you're applying for programs where you can submit a portfolio and show creative work, that can offset some academic shortcomings. And of course, you need to stress to your child that even if they had a bad GPA earlier on in their high school experience, they can make up for that. If they have better grades in their junior year, that can make a big difference in terms of getting accepted to college.
DJ, I'm just wondering if you have anything to add to that. Can you hear me?
I can jump in if we don't have DJ.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things that I always love for students to do before they even look at a school with a GPA, or they look at, before they come up with their list of schools, I like for students to come up with 3 places. The 3 places on any campus where they're going to find their connection and community. And places are where you will sweat, play, pray, live, learn, lead, love, and work. Okay, sweat, pray, play, live, learn, lead, love, and work. And those places are often places in high school where we're finding connection and community. So if we can identify our places, the things that we're going to do, where we're going to build relationships, those places a lot of times are places we can find at a wide range of campuses. Mm-hmm. So instead of the college determining our value, it starts with us determining where are the places we're going to do the things that we love to do. And I love having students practice this far before they even begin the application process, because then the academic part, yes, that's important, but what happens at a campus? And the other part that's really cool about this, parents, is if you start with this places and people mindset, then if you have 2 schools where one's more expensive, one's public, one's private, if a student can find their places and identify places before they even get to the individual school names, mm-hmm. then they're going to be much better equipped to identify what's going to happen once they're on campus. And that's going to be the thing that's going to drive the next step and really help them to be happy and fulfilled and passionate.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think, DJ, yay, I see you're back. You're moving again, which means that you're back with us. Sometimes these go on and off. So if that happens, no worries, just come right back in. But Harlan, what a great answer. Thank you. And Lee, and I think you began to answer a little bit about determining the best college fit in general, which was great. DJ, since you're back with us, you're back up and running, I see there. I'm going to send the next question to you. What is your stance on starting at a community college and transferring to a 4-year program when college funds are limited or maybe non-existent?
I think that's a great question. And I think a lot of families, based on the demographic trends that we see across the country, are in that area where community college might be the most viable option, not necessarily from an academic preparation standpoint, but more importantly, from a financial standpoint. And when I've connected with families in my career, whether it's families in my short time here at Butler that have had interest in Butler or at other institutions, I've always communicated that it's about where you finish. It's not about where you start. So when you start or have to start at a community college for whatever reason, your diploma at Butler University is not going to say by way of Ivy Tech Community College or some other community college across the country. And so, again, I think when families identify the priorities and the things that they're looking at, I think the financial piece is the biggest part of that discussion, to say what are we really looking at? What can we really afford? And obviously also having the dialogue between what I'm willing to pay and what we can pay. And if the community college is a good option to start off with, I know Butler and many other institutions that I've been with have transfer programs, and they also offer transfer scholarships. And there's still a viable opportunity for transfers, and they still have an amazing opportunity to kind of transition to the right type of community for those instances as well.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. Another question that I am often asked is, where can I find all this information or list of all the variables, and the admission factors, the criteria admission that counselors use? DJ, is there a place that you would suggest parents go, or Harlan, or even Lee? I think you might have some ideas on this one too.
I guess chiming in first, I would say, if they have already some sense of the institutions that they're interested in, and traditionally I would say we're probably talking about schools that have some sort of criteria, where that's not likely when you're looking at some community college instances. But if they're looking at schools that already have some standards, they can go directly to those websites, and or connect with the admissions office, and they can kind of provide them with some guidance on what those standards might be. But also there's other websites, whether you're looking at National Association for College Admissions Counseling and having some tools there to look at. But again, I think the other colleagues on the panel would have some other great suggestions as well.
Sure.
I wanted to add one thing with the community college piece, where, I go to a lot of high schools, and, people aren't always putting bumper stickers on their cars that lists like, the community college and celebrating that. And my thought is, this is the most brilliant part. It's a brilliant plan.
Yeah.
You save tens of thousands of dollars, but here's the catch. When you think of a community college, there has to be a bigger story for some students. Mm-hmm. And it's always just telling your story. I'm going to be going to this school for 2 years. I'm going to get my prerequisites out of the way. And I'm also going to get an internship, or I'm going to work 2 days a week at a job that's going to help me to learn something that I would love to do and be passionate about, so that when I graduate, and I'm going to look ahead to 2020 or 2021, it's May of 2021, and I have graduated from Butler, I've graduated from whatever my school is, where they have this acceptance program, because a lot of times you can't get into schools from high school with that GPA that isn't so terrific. So for you, going back to that other question, where your child's not that strong academically, if they can work in that 2-year school, they can get to that better school, and they can tell a story. It's always, what's your story? And if a student has a story of vision and passion, and that 2-year school is part of that vision, man, they're going to get there, and they're going to get there with a lot less financial restrictions or obligations.
Absolutely. As you're both talking about the experiences on campus and how do you figure all this out, I'm going to go to the last question here on how important are college visits, because whether you go to a community college or a 4-year college, going to that school to experience the school firsthand. And Harlan, even as I love your sweat, eat, pray. I need an acronym to remember it, but I love that notion of finding your place. And so, Lee, how important are college visits? What do you think about that?
So I think they're an essential thing to do. And whether you have the means to do a lot of college visits, or you're doing a lot of research online, there's a lot of virtual resources. Every college today is now trying to provide virtual tours, videos, information about the school. I would take a triangulated approach to looking at colleges. So, there's a lot of information about reputation of schools, and people look at the rankings. Of course, that's a valuable thing. It's good to know what the reputation of schools is. But what you're really looking for is the right school for your child.
Right.
And it's hard to find that. It's about cultural fit. It's about the right diversity. It's about the size of the school. It's about making sure that you can study the things that you want to be able to study there. And you can really only get into those details as you get to know a school better. There are big brand name schools, University of Michigan, or liberal arts colleges in the Northeast, et cetera. You really want to know that the school is the right fit for you. And you only get to do that if you get a feel for a place. You get a sense of, are the students there the type of students that you want to be interacting with? What's the professor to student ratio? Are you going to have small seminar classes or big sort of lecture classes? Understanding all of those things is going to make it a lot more likely that you're going to go to a school that makes you happy, where you're not going to need to transfer, and where you're going to be able to learn the things that you need to be successful in a career after college.
Yeah, makes complete sense. So, let's move along, since we're just a bit into this hour, and I want to make sure that we get to some of the other topics, to the application process and timelines, which, fits right back to how do you make all this work? So, question we're often asked is, when should I start the application process. So DJ, I'm going to go back to you just from your perspective, because you're on the other end of the application process. When do you think applicants should start this process?
Well, I think I want to make sure that I'm clear in saying there's a difference between when they should start the search process and when they should start the application process. And so I think it's critical that once students and their support team, which could be parents, it could be guardians, it could be, guidance counselors, it could be whomever, once they've identified some schools that they feel like they're either pretty good matches for, or sometimes people may use language of reach schools and they're the like, but schools that they feel like they would be a really good fit for, and they've kind of checked some priorities along the way to confirm that, then I think it's based upon what type of application deadlines the schools have. Mm-hmm. And so when schools offer kind of early options, I think it's critical for families to understand what those early options mean. And so, there's a difference between early action and early decision. Mm-hmm. One is binding of admission and feasible financial aid, which is the early decision, where the other is just saying you get notification much earlier, but you still have until the national candidate reply deadline of May 1 to make an informed and educated decision. And so I think it's by college, it's by or university, it's by institution, and also it's where they look to have most of their students apply. Here, we encourage families to apply early and apply for our early action deadline because that's where most of our some of our scholarship opportunities are kind of based upon that pool, and it gives us a good opportunity to kind of see them showing interest to us. But we also have a regular decision deadline, and then we also have rolling admission afterward. And so again, it's really based upon the family situation, the schools that they have an interest in. They feel like those schools are good fits for them. And then lastly, I would say I think at times students may have identified a school, but it may be better for them to approach a seventh semester and do well again to kind of improve that GPA, improve what that academic profile is going to look like when they apply. And for some schools that have later deadlines, that may be a better option for those students, depending on what their academic profile looks like at the time of application.
Yeah, great. So I'm wondering, Harlan or Lee, if you can maybe take the next one. What's the best method for, college application? So a lot of parents have heard about this common app and a coalition, but don't quite understand it. And I know every school is a bit different, but can you explain the process?
Sure. So Harlan, I can start and then feel free to chime in on top of it. So the Common App and Coalition are organizations that have tried to take a bunch of colleges and universities throughout the country and standardize the process so that it's a little bit less stressful for students and parents. So there are some common forms, and by submitting those forms, you can apply not just to one college, but to many colleges using the same forms. Number one, you need to make sure that there's a number of schools under the Common App or Coalition application that you want to apply to. So that's an important piece of it. But it does simplify the process depending on the schools that you're interested in. But the college application process does take some time. I think DJ offered some good advice there. If deadlines are coming up in December, or if you're applying early action and you have an earlier deadline than that even, you need to make sure that you're allowing plenty of time to fill out those applications. Optimally, you want to be able to start over the summer before you're applying so that you have time to think about your answers. If you're writing essays for schools, making sure that you're thinking through that process clearly and really representing yourself well. Recommendations take time, figuring out who's going to recommend you and giving your recommenders a good amount of time. Those are all things that you want to be really thoughtful about. And doing it at the last minute means that you're not going to put your best foot forward.
And I want to add something. Because it's so easy to apply to so many schools, what we're finding is that students are applying to more schools. And they're overwhelmed when they get their acceptance or rejection. Usually they get accepted to a wide variety of schools, and they don't know what to do because the way they're entering the process is more about being wanted than what they want. And I spend a lot of time working with high school students to really turn this process on its head. It's not about who wants you. It's not about working so that you will be wanted. It's about identifying what you want. And when you're applying to a school, even though you should know what's going to happen once you're there. And I'll give parents, this is a great tool that you can use with your kids. You could say, okay, it's the end of your first year in college. You're surrounded by 5 people, 5 new friends, okay? You didn't meet them in the classroom, and you didn't meet them on your floor if you're living on campus. So tell me, where are the 3 places you met these people who are now in your life? So now you're giving them the context. They're being able to have this story. They're going to figure out what it is that they want to do. And the academic, of course, plays a role in it. But the people who are in their corner, the people they're surrounding themselves with, that's going to really help them to identify the places where they're going to meet them. And that's going to help them to be much more efficient on their college tours. And it's going to help them to be much more pointed when they have their interviews. It's going to be much more directed when they're in their college fairs, because it's all going to be about what they want as opposed to who wants them, which really reduces a lot of the stress.
That's a good way to think about it, for sure. So the admission process has certainly gotten competitive over the years. DJ, when you look at students or prospects, how important is the balance of community service with the grades and the admissions essay? How do you think about an application?
I think that's a great question. And I would probably start my answer by just making sure that families know out there that every application process for each institution is different. Some don't have processes related to what they would identify as holistic review. And there are different variations of holistic review at different institutions. So I would just make sure to clarify and quantify that. When you think about those areas, from my experience with holistic review, the broader pictures tend to be performance, because those are the best predictors of how a student is going to perform in college in their first year. And that's the piece of what's been consistent, or maybe the lack thereof, in the sense of consistency during their high school career. And so when you're looking at that, what type of courses did they take? How rigorous were the courses? How did they perform in the courses? How strong is the high school in sending students to like-minded institutions in that area? How well do they write? If an institution requires a writing sample, and looking at the writing in the sense of, would they be able to be successful within the writing requirements and the rigor of our institution? Are they writing at a college level, or would they write at a college level with some additional support? Letters of recommendation and all those pieces play a role. And community service or extracurriculars do. I think the important thing that we communicate with our staff is this. We want families to understand that it's not necessarily about how many different activities a person has done so that they have a laundry list, but more so the things that they really are truly passionate about and that they enjoy, because you can definitely see the growth within somebody who was a part of a club and then they became treasurer and then they became VP. And from that experience, they decided to kind of create their own club and organization versus, I did this for 10 minutes. I did this for 2 hours. And you don't really get a sense of how they would add value to your campus community.
Can I ask DJ a quick question?
Sure.
So DJ, what about the applicant who is marginal with the grades, but they've done a lot of really great community service, or they've been active in their organizations? What could a face-to-face meeting be the thing that puts them over the top? Like, what could I tell that student who dreams of going to Butler but just is under what the academic requirements are? What's the magic?
Well, I think that, again, when you think about holistic review and institutions that practice what I would call some form of committee, the great thing is that admission counselor for that student can advocate for that student. And it allows within committee to really do the holistic review and look beyond the numbers. Numbers kind of give you some metrics. And then based off of that, you can kind of get a sense of, okay, well, what is the program that they're interested in? And is that an area of growth and need on our campus? What are the things that they're interested in? Is this somebody that, besides the numbers, looks like a Butler student and would be able to add value to what we know as the Butler way? And then lastly, I think the biggest thing that I think sometimes gets lost is, I would by no means say we have the hardest job in the world. But when it comes to trying to predict one's ability to persist over a 4-year period, we are in charge of trying to confirm somebody's ability to be successful in offering them admission. So that's the other piece. Is at the end of the day, if it's marginal, but they can be persistent, we think they can persist, that's a total different picture than them being marginal. And we just don't feel like they would be successful here, and we will be setting them up for potential failure down the road.
Yeah. Good advice there. So Harlan, as you're, giving advice to parents, what are the top things to look for prior to applying to a college? You've talked a lot about, visualizing yourself there years
Sure.
from now, and, where you're going to feel comfortable. How would you characterize the top things to look for?
So I would make it really simple. It's people, places, and patience. You can mix it up. You could say patience, places, and people. The process of applying, the process of exploring, it takes time. Parents need to be patient, and you need to know that your child is exceptional, and you have to trust your child is exceptional, because I believe your child is exceptional. I don't even know your kid, but I know that if you're here and you're taking this much of an investment, your child's going to be great no matter where they go. And I think that's really important, because then it gives your child permission to really explore. Then it's people and places. It's when you identify these places on campus, it's finding the people who are living the lives of those that the students want to live, and really encouraging your son and your daughter to identify those people who can answer their questions. We get so caught up in the schools and wanting to be accepted that we miss out on the personal experience and what that means. So really having people who are on these campuses. Another big rule I always say is, before you commit to a school, talk to people who are on that campus. And if parents say, oh, I don't know how to do this, my kid doesn't know how to do this, when you're on campus doing these visits, it's like you have a bucket, okay? And you're collecting people and you're identifying places. And it's those people who students are interacting with who can help them to answer a lot of the specific questions that will come up during the process. There are tons of students out there who are living this life, who want to help your kid and want to help you, as well as parent organizations as well. I'm reaching out to those parent organizations. So people, places, and patience.
That's great. That's a great way to think about it. Yes, Lee.
Harlan said a couple of things that resonate really strongly with me, and experience that I've had talking with parents as well. I think number one, there is no one right school for your child. Be open to the process. Let your child feel it out. You should obviously have some input. But the admissions process is stressful. There are, it's even if you have great application, it's hard to get in a lot of different places. So you need to be open-minded and supportive. I think that is really important as a parent. I think number two, make sure that you are guiding your child to pick a school that feels authentic to who they are, to who he or she is. You can get into a school that has a wonderful reputation. It can be a really bad fit for you personally. So making sure, as Harlan very articulately said, that the people that you'll be interacting with every day feel like they're supporting you, that you're getting your questions answered in the way that you need them answered, that both the social life and the intellectual life of that school mesh with who you are and who you're trying to become. If you don't do those things in the process, you're going to end up, even if you get into a great school, you're not going to be happy there.
Yeah, great. That's a great way to think about it. So I talk a little bit about test-taking timelines, because a lot of parents ask about this and try to, sort of bucket it out. So Lee, why don't you take the parents through this? Because between PSAT, ACT, and SAT, what's right for my child is often asked. And so let's start here, and then we'll go into the differences between the two. And how do you determine what's right for your child?
Sure, I'd love to talk through this. This is what we do every day at Kaplan. So can we do the animations here so that I can talk through the pieces? So when your child is a sophomore, first of all, they should be taking a practice PSAT, if possible. That is not going to any colleges. It is just to get a sense of where your child is in the process. And essentially, it'll both give you as a parent and your child a sense of how far they are from a sort of goal score, and the sorts of schools that they should be applying to that consider standardized test scores as an important part of the admissions process. It doesn't mean that if you don't have scores that are in the 75th percentile that you can't apply to reach schools, but at least you'll know a starting place, and you'll be able to figure out the things that you'll need to do, how much practice you'll need to put in, the strategies that you'll need to work on to be able to get the scores that you need to apply to certain schools and be effective and have a good chance at admissions.
Mm-hmm.
Spring of your sophomore year, you can take a practice SAT or ACT. And you're basically getting yourself ready to figure out which is the right test for you. So both the SAT and the ACT are accepted at all colleges that accept those scores across the country. They're equally accepted tests. So your child can take either or both. And the key is to figure out there are some nuances between the tests. The ACT has a discrete science section. So if you're comfortable doing reading comprehension and analyzing data and charts related to science, your child may show their best strengths through that. The SAT has become very much a passage-based test, so if your child is very comfortable doing a lot of reading comprehension, that may be a better test. If you do a practice SAT or ACT and Kaplan offers them for free, it's a good place for your child to get a sense of which is the right test for them. By fall of your junior year, you're going to take an official PSAT test, and then you're going to have a pretty good sense of where your strengths and opportunities lie as a test taker. And then what you're getting ready to do is take the SAT and or ACT in spring of your junior year. The ACT is offered in February, April, and June. The SAT is offered in March and May. So, junior year is a very busy time for students, for your children. It's important that they spend about 3 months preparing for those tests thoroughly. So you want to be able to practice at the right time that is going to allow them to really prepare thoroughly for those exams. AP tests are generally throughout your high school experience. They're always in May. So that's another complicating factor. And then sometimes people take the SAT or ACT again in the fall. It gives you one last chance to try to improve your score for the college admissions process. So these tests are very important. It is one of the few things that with a few months of practice, you can really improve your standing in the college admissions process. And, whether or not you have a high GPA or not, whether or not a school is looking at your application holistically, a really strong test score can be a differentiator both in terms of getting in and getting a better financial aid package.
I want to just add one thing. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
I tanked my SAT. I did a terrible job. And then I took my ACT, and I did so well, I called up the ACT headquarters to see if I made a mistake. And they said no. And it was because I went to a really competitive school, and I was like a 3.2 student, which put me in like the 40th percentile. But my ACT score really differentiated me and was what enabled me to get to a really, higher tier school.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, that's good. I love those personal stories. So do certain schools prefer the SAT over the ACT or vice versa? And how do you learn about this as a parent? Is there a one-stop shopping that I can go to learn about all this?
So DJ, I'd love to hear from your perspective first, and then I can weigh in from what I've heard.
I think we may have lost DJ because oh, there he is. You're back.
I just got in, but I would ask if you would please go back to the question so I'll know what the question is.
Sure.
So DJ, I was just asking, I'd love to hear from your perspective. At Butler, is there any sort of preference for the ACT or SAT? Wanted to get your perspective.
That's a great question. No, there isn't a preference. I think it's obviously, you have the different testing organizations and they may become the preferred method within a state, and then that state might change. And so you may see students as they get ready to transition into ACT being the main provider for the state, it may be some years before they fully transition. And so we tell students, we'll accept either or, and we accept both, and we will use the highest score from an individual type of exam. So for example, if they're taking the SAT-R, which is the newer version, and they've taken multiple exams, we'll take the highest subscores from that type of exam to use to make an informed decision for admission. And if they submit multiple ACT scores, again, we'll take and subscore and use the best scores we can to, again, try to make an informed decision on admission from that exam. And then lastly, I would also throw out there, though, the fact that we are talking about exams specifically, just to make sure families are aware that there are some institutions out there that are test optional. And so though I would never suggest that a student shouldn't take the exams, period, students may take the exams and then see that the exams themselves may not be the best slide of showing what they're capable of in the college setting. And so when you're looking at the colleges that you're considering, look into seeing if that is something that they offer as an option, which allows you to utilize your exam if you feel like it best kind of demonstrates what you're capable of, or not using it because there's a holistic review process and so many other things that they can consider in the process.
Right.
I think that's great perspective, DJ. So every year at Kaplan, we survey 300 of the top universities in the US, and we ask them these questions. The feedback that we've gotten from admissions directors across the country is very consistent with what DJ told us. Number one, the SAT and ACT are essentially interchangeable. Your child can take either exam or both and submit them, and they are equally viable for the admissions process. The policy at Butler does vary from other schools across the country, and this is an important one for families to figure out. At some schools, they accept the best scores if you take the test multiple times. At some schools, you submit all your scores and they see those scores and they're getting a sense of sort of the range and variability of your scores. So that is an important difference from one school to another. But to Harlan's point, these tests are different. And you may do poorly on the SAT and well on the ACT, or vice versa. And it's really important that you get a sense early on of where your strengths are so that you take the test or take both tests if that's going to be the thing that gives you an edge in the admissions process.
Mm-hmm. It's great. I think you've kind of answered the second question up here. So we are often asked, because we're Kaplan, what is the difference between the ACT and SAT, and I want to just flash that up there quickly. I think, Lee, you've talked to a lot of this, but is there anything in particular that you want to emphasize? And Harlan, of course, gave a great example of how they differ. You can do really well on one and not so well on the other.
Sure. And, this is where it's important that your child know his or her strengths and weaknesses. And it's also a good idea to take a practice test of each up front and have a sense of your strengths and weaknesses. I mentioned the ACT has a discrete science reading section where it's scored separate from the other portions. The SAT has a lot of passage-based questions, so there's a lot of text to read, and students who are really strong readers can show their strengths there, and students who have trouble reading a lot of passages under time conditions will need to do practice to get comfortable with that. There's a big focus on algebra on both tests. There's a little bit more of a data analysis, charts and graphs and interpreting them on the SAT. Both have optional essays with some slight differences between them. The SAT does have a no calculator math section where you can use a calculator on all sections of the ACT, so that may be something that plays to your child's strength or not. And the SAT math session has grid-in questions where you need to bubble in the correct answer. There's no multiple choice. All ACT math is multiple choice. So 5 pretty big differences between those 2 exams.
That's great. Thank you for laying that out. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and go to scholarships and financial aid. Obviously very important to all families and many of the parents on this call. So Harlan, I want to start with you. What suggestions can you give parents sending multiple children to college?
Well, I would say to pray. A lot of prayers and a good support system. Now, I would say that the most important thing is to have your child take ownership of this process. A lot of times the parents, they're the ones who are the engineers. And I really feel it's incredibly important for your kids to be the ones who are really understanding the financial obligations, understanding what it means if you need to take out aid, understanding what it means to have to pay back that loan in 4 years or 5 years. Now, a lot of parents, they will take on this themselves and be pushing the kids, and I think that's really not the way we need to go. Really empowering your child. Now, one of the best ways to do this is to have your child match up with someone who's living their life in one of the schools where your child wants to go, talking to the financial aid advisor and getting a list of some students from a similar background, trying to find out how they were able to get there. I just talked to a student yesterday at UConn whose parents made her do it all by herself. She found some students on campus her sophomore year. She ended up becoming a residential student, becoming a state resident, which cut the tuition by 3/4. And now for her junior and senior year, she's paying very little. And this is all based on having interactions with real students and understanding what the obligations are. So really emphasizing your kids need to take responsibility. They need to understand FAFSA. And you, of course, need to understand it as well. But that's where I'll start things, and I'll pass to whoever wants to jump in.
Yeah, DJ, can you talk a little bit about FAFSA and what, maybe take the next question about the best type of loan for college, and how do you think about that? Because it's certainly heavy on everybody's mind.
The things that I would say about the FAFSA is obviously, one, families continuing to be reminded of the changes that have occurred in recent times, where now we're focusing on the early FAFSA, where you can use previous years' financial information.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, this year it being released and being available as early as October 1st, just encouraging families to still be mindful of what the deadlines are for the institutions, as well as what the deadlines or priority deadlines might be within states, and to make sure that they are properly making sure they get that information done, and using appropriate tools like the IRS data retrieval tool to kind of pull information in and make it an easier and faster process. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the dialogue about loans, again, it goes back to I recall having as an admission counselor about the value of the education, and making sure, as it was referenced in dialogue already, like that the students themselves understand what a loan is, that we're prepared to walk them through the interest rates of those loans, when they have to pay those loans back, to talk to them about, well, what is it looking like for you over a 4-year period, and being mindful, hey, also remember what the average student actually takes to graduate, and is it 4 or is it 5 years? And so just making sure they understand all of those pieces. And I think it goes back to what not only the family is willing to invest, but what the student is willing to invest in their education. Again, whether they're putting it together an experience where it's a 2-year to a 4-year, whether they go to a 4-year and do all 4 years, but then they're mindful that they have plans to do grad school. There's a lot of cost potentially there before you start looking at scholarships, discounting, and loans. And so just really being mindful of thinking about their plan broadly, and saying, okay, what is it realistically going to look like for me, based on the institutions that I have in my search pool, and what type of loan amount am I comfortable with, before we make an informed decision.
And what is the best way to learn about all of these opportunities? Maybe Lee, you can take that one.
Sure, it's a hard thing. Number one, I would start with the FAFSA website and look at government resources. You want to understand the loan options that are available from the federal government, what the interest rates are right now, payback period, etc. There are resources and websites like FastWeb out there, which give you a lot of information about scholarships. There are books that you can look for, on Amazon or from your local library, that give you a sense of all different types of scholarship opportunities that families can apply for, based on your academic credentials, extracurriculars, demographics, where you're based geography-wise. These are really things where the earlier you start, the better served you're going to be. It takes a while to apply for scholarships and see if you're going to be able to get assistance there. To DJ's point, with prior year, you can apply for FAFSA earlier than you've been able to in past cycles. And it's really to your benefit to apply as early as possible. It's going to allow you to have more options. Sometimes state aid is released only once you've filled out your federal forms. So it does open up more funding sources to families to apply earlier for FAFSA and to really spend a lot of time researching your scholarship options.
And I'd say there are a lot of scholarships that are more accessible than students and parents realize. Right. So by talking to those students who have gotten the scholarships, because I was talking to one graduate, and she was saying, she made it her full-time job for 3 months to go after every scholarship. And she ended up getting tens of thousands of dollars, and she broke down the time, and it was like $300 an hour is what she was getting paid to do the work to get the scholarships.
The other thing that I'd point out is Two things. One, if you are a state resident or in some places a city resident, there are some terrific values for colleges within those states or municipalities. So definitely families should look at those options, and some of them give you just an excellent education for a great list price. The other thing is I wouldn't be scared of list price of schools writ large. There are a lot of liberal arts schools that are expensive to attend, but do give a lot of financial aid to families, both merit-based and generous assistance opportunities. So I wouldn't dissuade a family from considering a high list price school that has a great reputation. There's a lot of aid out there, and a lot of schools are looking for diverse applicants to create a great campus with lots of talented people from different backgrounds. So don't count yourself out of the game before you get started.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think we'll continue on this dialogue. I think we have a slide in here that shows kind of the full cost. Yep, great. Understanding the full cost of college, which I think is also important because it's not, it's beyond just tuition. It's the, administrative fees, the books and supplies, room and board. And so we've put some, just up here in general. I think, Harlan, you were getting ready to say something, or maybe DJ.
Yeah, it's just one more thing. The importance of talking to those students who are juniors and seniors. There's another student I was talking to who's an education major, and she's going to be a teacher. And there's a program that if you teach for X amount of years, then your loans will be forgiven by the federal government. So there are these programs that we don't always know about, and we may think, okay, this school is out of reach. But the reality is that if I have a dream, I should talk to the people who are living this dream, who are from a similar school or environment. And that's going to help me to really create a path so that I could get there.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. Find people that have gone before you and ask questions. And most all of us can find at least one or two people to ask questions of, either parents or children who have older brothers and sisters or siblings or whatever that I think could help answer questions. Many of you ask about the financial lingo. So we put together a quick slide. I think it's can be very confusing. We've already talked about FAFSA, which is up here. Merit-based aid, need-based aid, and scholarships, and they're all a little bit different. Lee, why don't you do a quick run through of some of these, and maybe DJ or Harlan, if you have some thoughts on how else do you get educated on just even understanding the lingo around this.
Sure. So just in terms of these categories, so merit-based aid is aid that your child will not have to pay back, or you as a parent if you're footing the bill for your child's education. It's generally based on academic achievements. It can be based on athletic achievements or skills that you have in realms of music or art, etc. But those are dollars that will never need to be paid back to the institution. Need-based aid is based on students' economic needs. So when you submit your FAFSA, there's a household income component, and based on that, based on certain thresholds, depending on how many siblings your child has and what your household income is, you can be awarded need-based aid, which also doesn't need to be paid back.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And then, of course, on the scholarship side, I think as Harlan said, if you put in the time and the diligence, based on merit, need, or community service, there are all kinds of scholarships out there from all kinds of organizations that are available to students.
Great. I think we have one last, the EFC. Yep. So if you want to just talk about this, just to ground everyone.
Sure, happy to do so. So this is your expected family contribution. So this is the total amount that families are expected to pay towards college costs from income and assets. So if you think about, I mentioned the list price of college, and that is the total cost of college from the slide we talked about before. It's the tuition plus room and board plus books plus food, etc. There's an estimated family contribution component. And then based on subtracting that part out, you understand what your financial need is. And based on that, you are either looking at federal loan sources or state loan sources or private loan sources to kind of meet the excess payments that you need to make to colleges.
So before we pivot off financial aid, Harlan or DJ, is there anything else that you think we didn't cover but a parent should know?
I want to just emphasize again the importance of applying to those schools that may seem out of reach, that may seem too expensive. There's a situation where there's a student that I met who applied to Brown and got in. The tragedy is that he got in. And he fell into that area where the estimated family contribution was much higher than they could possibly afford, and he would have graduated with a tremendous amount of debt. There was another state school that offered him a scholarship to be in their honors program. And after he did the math, he decided to go to the state school with the honors program. And he was very comfortable and happy and decided if he wants to go to Brown, he'll go as a graduate student. I think there's this sense that parents are almost afraid of their kids getting into the school that's too expensive because that's going to create a problem. But again, your child is going to be exceptional, and all it's going to do is validate how exceptional they are. And they're going to go through the process of making a choice that's going to be in alignment with where they're going to be fulfilled. And if they can look at this college application process from that holistic approach, from the people, places, patients, as opposed to the money being the thing that intimidates us, we're going to find a good fit, and we're going to find a place where we can, create a future that's going to be secure and prosperous.
Yeah, good.
I do have a few points that I wanted to just add. One is the notion that when it comes to merit-based aid, and in this sense, we're talking about based on academic achievement in the application process. One is for families to be mindful of, are those scholarships renewable? And if so, what are those criterion? Because you can get in and with that scholarship, but for example, if a student doesn't perform to the scholarship metrics, that scholarship could be taken away. And within 1 year, even without looking at need, the cost can change significantly where it may not be feasible and affordable for that student to continue to attend there. The other piece is to be mindful that every institution does not have the same ability to meet need. And so, yes, you have the CSS profile, and yes, you have the FAFSA, and for FAFSA it has the EFC, and some schools have a greater ability just across the spectrum to meet the need that students actually have and demonstrate, and there are a lot of schools that don't. And so, sometimes families may see what is known as gaps between what they assume the EFC is suggesting that they can pay and what the school is presenting in the sense of a financial aid award package that has everything in there. And then there may be a gap in between those pieces. And again, it's all about making an informed decision, kind of going to the example that you just gave between looking at but it not being financially feasible, and then having another option where, because there was this honors program, that there were some scholarships. So when you're looking at the whole spectrum of the schools that end up in the search list, and you get through the financial aid season, what the family can do from a financial standpoint and what those schools are offering may be a game changer in the end result.
I want to add one more thing, is that when you get your package from the school, is to tell the other school what you got. If another school is giving you more, tell the other school, because sometimes they'll accommodate and compete because they want you.
Yeah, great. All wonderful feedback and great advice. In our last 7 minutes, we're going to switch gears a little bit to a broad category, which is just supporting your child or supporting your children. And we have a lot of questions around senioritis and how much do senior grades count for, and how do we get our kids to own the process? And Harlan, you've talked very eloquently about that. But let's start with senior grades. Lee, does it matter?
Sure, and it does matter. We have heard stories here at Kaplan of universities rescinding admissions. We've heard about putting students on probation when they're accepted because of really a big fall off in grades in senior year. The way that I would try to phrase it towards your children is, this is kind of the last chance that you have to make sure that you are college ready, and the study skills, the time you put in, the dedication that you put in your senior year is really preparation for getting ready for the next 4 years. And I know that's a hard thing to do. A lot of, children, when they get to senior year, it's just easy to start thinking about, oh, I can take this as a free pass, I'm already into college. But you want to do that with a great deal of caution, because there could be negative consequences to that.
Yeah. Harlan, I'm going to let you sort of take the next one, because you've talked about accountability and letting really encouraging the child to own the process, which I think is really valuable for parents to hear. So what part of the process overall should they own and not own? And what part does a parent own?
So I'm going to give parents 5 rules, and I'll do it real quickly to help you, and we could share these after this as well. Here are 5 rules, parents, that you can live by, and you can start earlier in your child's high school career, even in middle school. That's going to help your child to be empowered as opposed to overpowering your child. One is to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Recognize that change, transition is uncomfortable, and give yourself permission and allow your child to feel it. It's okay to feel that. 2 is don't panic. Always think people, places, and patience. And I know I mentioned that a lot, but really for every question, there are always people and places who can find the answers, and your child has to get in the habit now of being patient and working through that. 3, their struggles belong to them. Their victories belong to you, okay? Struggling is important. Let them struggle down the hall as opposed to struggling across the country, okay? Let them practice. That means being a good parent. Number 4 is the 24-hour rule. Give everything 24 hours. Big feelings, when they're overwhelmed, let them sit and marinate in it for 24 hours. The 5th rule is asking the question, what do you think you should do? And then not talking. And let them work through that process, because that's going to help them so that when you're not there, they're going to think, what should I do? I'm going to give it 24 hours. I'm going to feel what it is. I'll struggle if I have to. People, places, patience. This is uncomfortable. I'm going to work to get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah, what great advice. I use the 24-hour rule with my 10-year-olds, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's just gives you perspective, just some time. Yeah, so those are 5 great tips. DJ, do you have anything to add to that?
Okay, here we go. I wanted to make sure I had everything going. I think when we think about the process and we're asking who owns what, I think the piece that we see is more related to the visit, which I've overseen visit experiences for a number of years, and then also within the application process itself. And so when it comes to actually visiting campuses, to shine themselves, allow them to kind of ask the questions, allow them to try to navigate dialogue. Some schools may have an interview process or at least a meeting with an admissions representative. So allow them to kind of engage, because in the end, it is their process. Now, it doesn't mean that there won't be questions from the parent perspective, but allow them to kind of navigate that moment themselves if that's at all possible. And when it comes to the application itself, with the exception of making sure that your information within the application is accurate, and maybe, providing another set of eyes to review an essay or a writing sample, if that's a part of the process, they should own that process as well. It should be, their time, their dedication, their sweat, their tears into that process to make sure that they're presenting their best selves on paper to those institutions, and then capitalizing on any other opportunity to demonstrate who they are and how they may add value to a campus community.
Yeah, that's all terrific advice. I know a lot of the parents have juniors that are on the call, so I'm going to flip forward to the next slide that just gives you a sense for the junior year and senior year. But I want to ask in the last 2 minutes, just each of you to share any further advice that you have for parents that you think, gosh, we didn't get to, but if I could tell you one thing as a parent, this is what it would be. So why don't we start? Lee, what would it be?
Yeah, so I think first of all, your upper class years of high school are incredibly stressful. So as a parent, be supportive to your child, but also know that it goes fast. And if you don't prepare through this process, you're not going to have as positive outcomes as you could otherwise. So it's important, junior year is an incredibly busy time between academics and extracurricular activities and standardized tests and thinking about college. Trying to be as prepared and regimented and process-oriented as possible is really important. Making sure that you take your standardized tests seriously and doing well on them. Trying to put your best foot forward in terms of grades, even if your GPA wasn't great in your freshman and sophomore year, making sure that your child is really putting their best foot forward in their junior year. Making sure that they're showing passion and dedication to extracurriculars. All of those things are going to set you up for much better success. And then as a parent, making sure that you are playing a role in the financial aid process, in helping your child, not choosing schools for them, but certainly being supportive and helping them understand what their options are. The more that you can be a resource to them and guide them and try to alleviate some stress, the better served your child is going to be through the process.
Great. DJ,
I
any
would
advice?
Yes, I would just say, and again, I think what you all have up there on screen is fantastic. The addition that I would add is trying to provide an opportunity where either they can go by themselves or you can join them to visit some types of campuses, whether it's ones that are on their initial list or just ones that are at least within the local area, just because of maybe some distance challenges or financial challenges, so that they can get a sense and a feel of what that atmosphere might look like. Traditionally, when you think about students that end up depositing at a school, they tend to have visited multiple times. And so if they can get started early, they may pick up on some things that may require them to maybe want to come back and see the experience at a different part of the process, versus waiting until mid or late senior year to visit, and they've only had one opportunity to see that institution. So I would just reiterate the importance of trying to carve out some time, whether it's a Saturday or hopefully during a school week where they can actually see campus in motion to go check out some college campuses.
That's great. And Harlan?
I'll give you three things. The best school may not always be the best school for your child, and it's so important for your child to identify what he or she wants. The other part is, if you have to be the one to finish it or complete it to get it submitted, an application, they're not ready, okay? Don't do it. Let them deal with whatever happens next. And the third thing is, not all seniors are ready for college. There's this expectation that we're supposed to do this next thing. And you know what? Some students need a gap year. Some students need a pause. And it's really important to listen to your son or daughter and to hear what it is that they want and how they feel, even if it's something that isn't what you expected, because that gap year or that time in between senior year and that first year could be the most incredible year where they'll grow socially, emotionally, and be much more centered and responsible and self-driven for that next part of their experience in life.
Well, all three of you have given tremendous advice. I myself have learned a lot. So thank you very much for your thoughtful guidance. So DJ, thank you. Harlan, we really appreciate you being with us. I know you're flying out to Chicago next. And Lee, of course, thank you for your guidance around this. And then most of all, parents, thank you for spending some time with us. I hope you found this hour to be both helpful and informative. And if you need anything, please feel free to call us. We've put our 1-800 number up here, and we're very willing to help you through the process. So thanks again, and enjoy your evening.